Yo, what is up guys? It is Bumfris, back with episode 86 of our Reddit series. This one's gonna be a little bit of ProRevenge, and I have a feeling you're gonna love this one. I don't know why I haven't done this subreddit more, it's really fun and a lot of you guys did ask for it, so don't forget to leave a like on the video to show that you want more of it. Also, one like is one Bumfris point, so you guys know how it is. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy some ProRevenge. So for some backstory, I was over at her place and tacked up two of her horses. One was named Tiger and the other D. I was on Tiger at first, but she was misbehaving, so T switched with me and hopped onto D. We were going through the back hills and came across assholes 1 to 3, and that's where things begin. T and I came up over a hill and we could see a small group of guys that were shooting at targets. We stopped and waited for them to motion us past, which is polite with horses, and they didn't stop. Tiger is really laid back, while D is a good girl. She's just young, so she gets nervous, but she's a sweet little thing. She's a pony technically, but still a good girl. T whistled to them and they looked over and we motioned that we wanted to go by. They flipped us off and ignored us after that. Now, T has gotten feistier with age, so she looked at me and I'm visibly boiling, so we decided to wait and show them that we weren't backing down. I was to the left of T, and after a few minutes, we were considering walking behind them since we have permission to walk through the landowner's property, who we'll call LO. We were about to move when I looked up and one of the guys had shifted his stance and shot off a couple of rounds. I heard one ricochet off the metal around the targets and we heard it and then saw it hit a couple of feet away. I stared for a second and was wheeling D around as the men laughed and T let loose with a few choice words and we took off. Turns out little pony can run like hell when needed. Tiger was fat at the time, but she was up D's tail as we fled. We stopped halfway up the next hill and I could tell that T was livid. I was trying to calm D as Tiger panted and I was raging once we all calmed. T was on her phone and jumped off. She gave me Tiger's reins while she walked the half/quarter mile back to take photos of assholes 1 through to 3. She stomped back and we went a different direction to go around them and finish our ride. We got back to her house and she asked if I was okay with tacking out Tiger while she made a few calls. I told her I was fine and she walked off. I could hear shouting from her house all the way to the barn, but I didn't say anything since it was better that I didn't call about it. She came out after about half an hour or so. She called LO and he was furious. His nephew was watching the property and he asked if I could go shooting on his little DIY shooting range. LO told him to always yield to the horse riders in the area since he didn't want us to get hurt. T went to talk to him and showed him the photos of assholes 1 to 3 and he confirmed that asshole 1 was the one with the rifle. LO had cut his vacation short to come back and get it sorted out. I didn't see what happened, but according to T, the nephew got his ass kicked by LO and his family shunned him for about 6 months due to the danger that he put us and our horses in. If one of those horses had been hit, we would have ended up on the ground at the least. He was banned from LO's property for the rest of his life. The asshole's family brought us an apology gift of wine and a few gift cards to the local tack shop. I went to get a new halter for my horse since he broke it again, and the gift card had $200 on it. See, I said in yesterday's entitled parents video that the type of revenge that I love is just that clean revenge where nobody gets hurt, and I honestly reckon that this revenge fits that perfectly. Like I said, no one got hurt, it was just a little tattletale that got somebody in trouble for their stupidity. That's what I call a good revenge because you don't stoop down to the level of the person who screwed you over in the first place. This one isn't my story, but rather my grandfather's. And for a little background, my grandfather has a very short fuse when it comes to dealing with other people's crap. He's sort of mellowed out as he's got older, but when he was younger, I've been told his temper was legendary. At the time of this story, my grandfather was living on a small farm. Next to his house was a raised levee that was made of dirt and covered in loose gravel. The levee formed a backwards C shape as it went by his house since it followed the path with the river. His house was on the outside curve. This, along with the trees on both sides of the road, created a blind curve in the road that will be important later. During harvesting season, numerous trucks would drive past his house to and from the various farms in the area to pick up produce and take it where it needed to go. A problem arose, however, when the truck driver started ignoring the posted speed limit, which was 10 to 15 miles an hour, and going too fast around the aforementioned curve. The speeding caused the trucks to throw rocks, gravel, and huge clouds of dust down on my grandfather's house on a daily basis. Naturally, this was quite annoying as his backyard was getting covered in dust and the rear of his house was being constantly peppered by rocks. First, he tried speaking to the truck drivers themselves, which went nowhere. Then, he tried talking to the owners of the truck company, which didn't do anything either. He even put up homemade signs on his stretch of the road asking the trucks to slow down, but it was to no avail. At this point, my grandfather realized that he was going to have to do something more productive to get their attention. So one night, he got his tractor out with a bulldozer blade on the front, scraped up some dirt, and built a homemade speed bump just around the blind curve on the road. And I don't mean a modern, mostly flat speed bump that is usually 3 or 4 inches tall. By his own estimation, this thing was about 8 or 10 inches in the center, so more like a small mound. To top it all off, it was perfectly positioned so that by the time the driver saw it, it would be way too late to even try and slow down. He didn't even have to wait long to see the results. The very next morning, he was sitting in his kitchen when he heard a loud crashing noise outside. Upon investigation, he found a truck had fallen right into his trap. It had driven around the curve going way too fast, hit the mound full speed, lost control, and driven straight off the 25-foot levee into a giant olive tree. This completely wrecked the truck as the tree hadn't budged at all with the impact. The driver, though stunned by the accident, was mostly unharmed and proceeded to have a new asshole ripped by my grandfather over his speeding. As you can imagine, there was no more speeding from those truckers ever again. The cherry on top was that the company that owned the trucks actually had to pay him to use his tractor to pull the truck back onto the road, as the area was too far from town for any tow trucks to come out, and no one else in the area had a big enough tractor. Damn, I guess that's one way to get somebody to stop speeding around the back of your house and ruining your property, hey? What I love about this though, is being that this is obviously ProRevenge, it was just so well thought out. He made sure that they couldn't see it before they hit it, he hits it, and you just know they're never going to do that again. Revenge that gets a bit of payback, and revenge that stops any more problems in the future. That's my type of revenge. So I found this one on Quora, and I thought it was too good not to post here. So the original question was, if a coworker is stealing your food, and you address the problem by putting something in it that makes the thief sick, can you be prosecuted for that? What if you put your name on it and leave a "do not eat" note? So many years ago, in the early 70s, my dad came home complaining that someone was drinking the iced sweet tea that he took in for lunch. He's getting ready to eat and half would be gone. He didn't know if they were using a cup or drinking straight from the thermos, and considering the group he worked with, he wasn't going to take any risks. This left him with only water for lunch. This happened several times and he finally decided to do something about it. He went to the pharmacy and asked for the strongest laxative that they had. The pharmacist asked why he wanted the strongest one, and my dad explained the situation. The pharmacist, who was an older gentleman that had been running the store most of his life, told my dad that it was a bad idea since it could cause dehydration and other problems. Instead, he handed my dad a bottle labeled Essence of Peppermint and told him to use the entire bottle in the thermos. He also told my dad that if anyone asked what was in the tea, to just say, "Don't worry about it." This was truthful, as he said that drinking the entire bottle would only settle your stomach if you had indigestion and nothing more. The next day, he took the spiked tea to work. Sure enough, at lunch, he found that the spiked tea had been tapped again, so he recapped it, remarked that he'd soon know who took the tea, and finished his lunch. A few minutes later, a coworker came to him holding his stomach, demanding to know what was in the tea. He just said to him, "Don't worry about it." Shortly after that, the co-worker left work sick. Soon, his wife called and asked my dad what was in the tea, as her husband was moaning that he was in pain and he'd been poisoned. My dad told her what was in it and told her to call the pharmacist and verify that it was harmless. She was laughing too hard to even say goodbye as she hung up the phone. Bro, this pharmacist is a straight G. Decided to help this dude out by covering his back and making sure that nothing bad could come from it, but still making sure that he could get his revenge on this dude who was stealing his stuff. This is almost a perfectly orchestrated bit of revenge, and I bet this dude didn't take the tea anymore. Many years ago, when I worked for a rent-to-tow company in a small town, there was a little apartment complex which we made frequent deliveries to, and just as frequent, had to repo from. It had been a motel when it was built, and the owner turned it into apartments by just making doorways in the walls between rooms, putting a kitchen and living room in one, and a bedroom in the other. The place was very rundown and apparently pretty inexpensive, and based on a few things customers said, it seemed like the majority of the tenants moved in there for short times. I figured it was because they were waiting for prefab houses to be financed and delivered, since the vast majority of housing in that town was mobile homes. Turns out I was wrong, but more on that later. Between deliveries and pickups, we were visiting this place multiple times per month, but the landlord wouldn't let us park the truck in the parking lot to do it. It was a motel parking lot, so there was way more space than the tenants needed and plenty of room for our truck, but the minute we pulled into the lot, the landlord would come running out of the office and yell at us to get the truck off his property. We were still allowed to deliver and such, we just had to carry the couches and old style rear projection big screen TVs across the gravel lot from a truck parked on the street. It was more than a little annoying. Then the day came that I was visiting some customers who was a young couple to have them sign an extension because they couldn't make their repayment, and I saw an eviction notice on their door. I knocked, they answered, and then they too saw the notice. They explained that they needed the extension because they were behind on rent, but the eviction was unexpected because they were only 2 days late. The notice gave them 1 week to move out, and so they signed the extension and I left, albeit a little bit suspicious because that didn't seem right to me. A few days later, I got a call from the couple saying that they needed to return the stuff they'd rented because they were being evicted and had to move to a motel. I told them to wait there and I'd be over in an hour. Now, my wife had worked in the rental office of our previous apartment complex, so I knew some tenant laws. When I checked after getting the extension signed, I found that evictions couldn't be served with only a week's notice. They had to give 30 days for the tenants to pay or move out. If they moved out, the landlord could take any unpaid rent out of their security deposit. This was a small town with lots of mobile homes, so I'm guessing the law was to prevent people being evicted from rented land on which they had a mobile home that they owned, but it applied to apartments too. Normally, I'd have considered this none of my business, but everyone in our store hated that landlord and wanted to get back at him. So I printed out the applicable rental law pages from the town's website and drove over to the apartment complex. There, I knocked on the door of every one of our customers living there, which was about half of the 20 or so apartments, and gave them a copy of the law. While doing this, I learned that the landlord had been evicting people like that for being even a day late, then keeping the deposits, citing the very law that I was giving to my customers, just not the part about the 30-day leeway. He charged rent in advance, meaning you pay for the next month at the end of each month, so people were losing their deposits over being 1 day late. On top of that, the landlord wouldn't accept late payments, even if they were before his scheduled eviction time, because he made more money by evicting people and moving someone new in, since he kept all of their deposits. I told the couple that had started all of this that if I were them, I wouldn't move out, and I'd contact a lawyer or at least the city housing department and file a complaint. They were worried because the landlord had said that he'd have the sheriff's department evict them if they didn't move out in time. There were no local police as it was a small town, but I said that even if the landlord called them, I doubt they'd actually evict them if they cited the law. That was about all I could do, and I hoped that it would be enough. Turns out, it was. The couple came in a few weeks later to pay for their rental furniture and to thank me for all of my help, telling me that the landlord had just been arrested. They'd filed a complaint, and when the landlord called the sheriff to evict them, it had kicked off an investigation. I never learned what exactly the charges were or what happened to the landlord, but the complex ended up under new ownership, and the new manager had no problem with us parking on their property for deliveries. Also, the number of our repos and deliveries there suddenly dropped because people were no longer being evicted constantly. You know, it's always nice when somebody who's breaking the law, being a horrible person and just straight up scamming people, gets what they deserve. It's almost like this person started a revolution of sorts within the complex. I really do wonder though how long this dude ended up spending in jail or whatever happened with him, but here's hoping that he really got a good punishment. Alright everyone, that is that for today's episode of ProRevenge. I just want to start off by saying thank you so much for watching, and I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Like I said yesterday, I do want to get back into other subreddits. Lately I have just kind of had a focus on entitled parents and a bit of Ask Reddit. It seems like Ask Reddit's been really popular on YouTube, not so much for me, so as a result of that, I wouldn't mind just mixing it up and doing different subreddits. So again, like I used to do, let me know in the comments below what you want to see, and I'll make sure to do as many of them as I can. Also, just before I wrap things up, I would appreciate it greatly if you guys would follow me on both Twitter and Instagram, either or, whichever one you use. But I have been posting a little bit more on there recently. On Twitter, I actually did a bit of a giveaway. I wasn't asking for anything in particular. I just wanted to give out some CD keys that I had, and I'm thinking about doing that every so often. So easiest thing to do, just follow me there and you won't miss that. Otherwise, I am going to have that wrap things up for today's episode of ProRevenge. I just want to say again, thank you so much for watching. I hope you're all having a fantastic day, and I'll see you all tomorrow for either an episode of Entitled Parents or whatever you guys want to see. Bye.